I was actually just thinking about maybe kind of you guys forming maybe, I don't know how many people here? 25? It's kind of maybe doing 4 or 5 groups. I know you're kind of in the rows, but maybe you can move the chairs around. And I thought you might want to think about doing some of the things we've talked about and thinking about whether you want to pick one person's organisation or your organisation or your business and just kind of overlaying some of these things that you could workshop around it, and maybe we can just do a brief round-up at the end. So I'm thinking 10 minutes. The row might get together. We might have to move the first lot forward so we can get some space. And I'm happy to help you.
And one of the things we talked about was just, well, I guess I talked about some quality over quantity, not pressuring yourself too much to churn things out all the time, and maybe making a bit of a plan, like a calendar of when you're going to put things on your website and social media. And we also talked about the importance of planning where you're going to sell things, so whether it's like a gallery or a shop front, just the location and sort of the demographic of people who go through there, and just working out, just for example, you know, whether it's worth it for the exposure of being somewhere where there's lots of people or somewhere where there's sort of your niche target market. Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's a really good, I mean, like, you know, you're talking about, are you better off being in a group audience, or are you actually better to think about what actually suits your art, your product, your experience? I think is really what I was trying to get across today, is that thinking about, are you better off talking to people who are actually going to engage rather than investing in an audience that's actually not going to engage with you and finding that proposition and value. So that's great. Really like to finish off the conversation about social media, but okay, group over here.
Well, we had the several
I said you weren't to do this.
No, we,
all right.
we had the challenge that we have several conversations. We started by learning about music ACT and all the good things they're doing through, in particular, using the internet and all the challenges of using the web and generating buzz through non-traditional channels, and so I guess it was my particular interest to see what young people are doing and how they're doing it. They're doing it so well. I guess they're battling a challenge with recognition for the organization. But through that conversation, we came up with 2 things that were really interesting. One was business by association, where you try to replicate the audience that you have in mind, and how do you identify those who look like the people that you want to get through the door, and we like that. But we also talk about the challenges of segmentation, how the extreme that you can go through to segment your audiences, and so you can waste a lot of time going down that path. And finally, Mike has some interesting challenges as an illustrator, dealing with an audience that at this stage he might not be that interested in those who are following him. He wants them to grow up, and then and we were very encouraging, saying that those who are following him now are going to indeed grow older, and that might be a reserved audience for him, and he has to grow with them, or bring them along
on the journey. Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting point, is that because audience development is not about today.
Yes.
It's about the short, medium, and long term. So I think that's kind of a very interesting discussion to be had there, even though you might kind of get a little bit frustrated at the moment, but bringing them with you.
He did say he was impatient. He needed to.
Yeah. Well, are you a parent? You shouldn't be impatient if you're a parent. You've got to say that. Well, that's a lesson to be learned. Yes, that's right. But that's a great conversation, and I think it's really interesting about, we've had 2 groups who have actually, really engaged in that social media space, and about, the one thing I can say to you is that, you can actually spend too much time segmenting your audiences, and I think I started with saying, although it kind of seems like a really complicated process, the simpler you make it, and the more you talk to your audiences, the more you find out about them. So that's what I said to you. My greatest experience is actually going on the floor and actually talking to people who are coming through my institution, and I try and do that, like once a month, once a fortnight. I like to get down and I like to be that person behind the front desk. They don't know that I'm a manager. I like to get down and actually talk to people who come into it, and it's weekends, during the week, And I have to say it's a really valuable tool, but it also lets you know about who's not coming because you know who's actually coming through your door. So I think that's great.
Yeah, our conversation looked at basically how what we learnt from today fitted with each of our own needs. We've got a gallery operator here, so that's quite direct. Artists trying to sell their work, their audiences are their potential customers. As a creator of theatre, I need to look at what the proposition for any particular show is, and then try and match that to a theatre who will actually stage it. So for me, the audience is really the potential theatre's audience. So it's almost finding sponsors. For the Canberra Choral Society, they've got potential members as one audience. They've got potential audiences to come and see the shows as another. As with many Canberra sort of institutions, they're driven by retirees. There is a gap in attracting that younger market. Social media didn't come into the conversation. It was more about exposure through other media, but looking at other ways to get word of mouth out.
And I also think part of the script's conversation was identifying those audiences, which I thought was really interesting about who are your audiences, and where your gaps were, which I think was a really interesting conversation. It's great.
Yeah. And can I just add to that? You were making the point that sometimes you almost set yourself up for failure by saying, we need to engage more young people. So we need to engage all young people, and we didn't get all young people through the door, so, this is too hard, young audiences, well, you need to actually not be so ambitious. We, for us as Choral Society, we need to engage young people who are interested or potentially interested in our kind of music. And if we, are expecting that any young person will come along to our concert, then we'll never get started.
No.
No. So we have to be realistic about that. And I'm sure you have the same thing when you say, young youth audiences. You're not trying to get every single young person.
No, that's right. Because you're just not going to have the product that's actually going to engage them or the experience. So, and I think it's where you have to think about the experience.
That's right. And in business, you're not trying to make a sale to every person who walks into your shop. You know that 80% of those people will never buy anything that's in your shop. They've just walked in the door. You only want to invest your time in the 20% who are likely to make a sale, to buy something. And the challenge, of course, is to work out what category each individual customer falls into.
Yeah, that's exactly the challenge. Yeah. So thank you. Last group.
Lisa was telling us about her online company. She's virtually gone online with Planet Boab, which is sustainable T-shirts, environmentally friendly sustainable T-shirts. She's very aware of where her market is. And you've really got room to grow, but that's your only marketing tool is your website, and so you have a very specific challenge, whereas the Belconnen Arts Centre markets itself through many diverse ways, and through our contacts in the community, through the board has excellent contacts. And we realised when we were talking about engaging with the University of Canberra, which is less than a kilometre from us, that the board engages with the University of Canberra. Our triangle is the wrong way round. We're dealing with top management, with the Chancellor and the Vice-Chancellor, and we've got someone on the board from the head of one of the schools. We actually need to get all the students in, and it's a real challenge to turn that triangle the other way round. And we've already identified a few things that would assist us, and getting some volunteers would be terrific. So that they work on the weekends. And we've also identified looking at the way other organisations work, the doorman at the Portrait Gallery is just so obvious that when you come in, you immediately engage with what happens in the building. In the Belconnen Arts Centre, you walk in, you go past the route to the loo, past the gallery, and the reception desk is down 20 metres on the right-hand side, and you've generally made up your mind what you're going to do before you even get to the reception desk. So the recommendation will go that we have some sort of we're going into building stage 2 because the building's not finished. We're going to recommend a desk to be at the front to greet people as they come in.
Actually, or you could just not put a desk there.
Not have a desk.
There's an option for you.
But how do you greet people and let them know what's going on?
Well, you might have something behind you that might have the information for them, but actually have somebody who actually walks out actually engages with those people in the space rather than from behind a desk. I always say to the front of house staff where I work, and I did it at the museum too, people come in and they think, right, there's somebody behind a desk, they're going to tell me what's on. And that's invariably what Interacts is about. So we've got X, Y, Z, W, you know, whatever on. When you actually come out from behind the desk, you actually say to those people, well, why are you here today? You know, what are you doing? What would you like to do today? It's a different kind of conversation, I think, which is just an interesting thought for you to think about. Not saying you have to do it that way, but I'm just saying it's an interesting way.
It's where we have the resources to do that. We don't have a big staff.
Yeah, no, that's right. And so I am saying, but you know, think about having somebody or making those people come out from behind the counter.
Or even at just particular times of day. But also late opening, we don't have, there's no cost associated with opening day. You just read across to people. And identifying new audiences. If anyone's been in the Belconnen Town Centre recently and seen all those flats going up, they will be full of young people who live and work in the town centre who will be looking for something to happen on a Friday night. Just
great. Well, that's great. Yeah, terrific. Well, it's well done. Well, thank you.